guys, today is paint day, so I wanted to get an early start today because we've got a lot of work to do. So I was up pretty late last night working on this. I was to the point where I thought all the sanding was done, so I went and wiped everything down with a wax and grease remover. Found a bunch of pinholes, so my OCD took over like it always does. And then I ended up going over the entire engine bay with glazing and spot putty. Then sanded it again, and then to finish I went over everything with a Scotch-Brite pad just to soften up all the edges. So anywhere where I block sanded on these edges here, I wanted to make sure that there were no hard edges on it. So this worked very well to make sure every edge had a nice soft edge on it. So I think we are now to the point where we can start masking. I've wiped everything down one last time, and I think we're ready to start masking. Now I almost forgot that we are also painting the valve cover the same color as the engine bay, and I haven't done any prep on this yet. So at this point it's been sandblasted, and I primed it with an epoxy primer the same time I did the engine bay the first time. So this all needs to be scuffed. I also remembered that I wanted to fill in these holes here. So this morning I mixed up some epoxy and I filled in those holes. So this is still setting. It's probably got another half hour to go. It's still kind of tacky. So once that stuff is set, we're gonna get this prepped. Basically, I'm not going to do any block sanding or anything on it. I'm just going to scuff everything up. I do want to take care of some of the pinholes and imperfections in these welds, so I might do a bit of work on these just because this material was very contaminated and it didn't produce a very good weld. So I'm basically just going to try to smooth these out a bit to make them look a little better. Nothing underneath, but probably just whatever's visible on top. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I've already wasted enough time sanding and doing body work that's probably not necessary, so I'm just going to try and do a very quick prep on this so that it's ready to go. Alright guys, as always, that took way longer than expected, but I got the valve cover finished. I ended up spending a lot more time trying to get those areas filled in that I wanted to, so at least it's done now. I've been out here for about 6 hours already, so I've got that prepped. I found a few more things in the engine bay while I was wiping it down. The VIN number on the firewall I wanted to make sure was still visible. A lot of it was already filled in. Quite a bit from the previous paint jobs on the car, and also all the layers of primer I have on there, so some of the numbers were barely visible. So I took my scribing tool and kind of scratched them out, and I sanded it so it looks good again. Again, that was another thing that probably wasn't necessary, but my OCD was telling me that I needed to do it. So that's done. Now I gotta start masking this car because I am way behind schedule. So I'm just gonna go hard on the masking. Once we're masked, I'm gonna wipe it down one more time, then we're gonna start spraying. So let's get this thing masked, and then I'll catch up with you guys later. Alright guys, the engine bay is about as masked as it's gonna get. I also got the valve cover done too, so I'm going to quickly wipe everything down now, and then we'll go through everything I have for paint, and then we'll get spraying. So let's get to it. Alright guys, so the engine bay is officially ready. Valve cover is ready. Got all my paint lined up here, so I've wiped everything down with a mild wax and grease remover, but I think we are good and clean now. I was worried that the soap water that I used for smoothing out the seam sealer wasn't coming off, so I actually ended up taking some Scotch-Brite and cleaned off all the water spots that I could find left over from the soap water, and then I finished with this. So I do believe the engine bay is good and clean now. There's a few areas that I was not able to scuff properly, so I am going to use an adhesion promoter. So I'm going to use this on the valve cover for sure, and maybe on the seam seal areas in the engine bay. So I got 3 cans of epoxy primer. This is a beige epoxy primer, so it's going to make a good base for the gold paint that I'm going to be using. So I wasn't sure how many cans I was going to need, so I got 3. I'm thinking I'll probably only need 2, but we'll see how this stuff covers. Depending on how many imperfections I find while I'm painting, I may need to add another coat, so 3 just in case. And then I got 4 cans of the base coat. Again, I don't know how much I'm actually going to use. The information I got when I had this mixed was that it goes on pretty thin. So that's kind of why I opted to go with the beige primer. And then I think that's going to help this stuff cover as well. So 4 cans of this, I should be fine with 4. And then last I have the Spray Max 2K Glamour Clear. So this is a high gloss. I got 3 cans of that, and I actually still have 1 left over that I haven't used yet. This is from when I did the rad support. So if I end up needing another can, I have it, but I'm pretty sure 3 is going to be enough to clear the engine bay just fine. And then I also went ahead and replaced the pre-filters on my mask. They were filthy. They were full of sanding dust from all the body work I've been doing. So got some fresh pre-filters. I think we're ready to start spraying. So yeah guys, like you've heard me say before, once I get started with this stuff, I won't really be able to stop in between. So I'm basically going to set you guys up on the tripod. I might show some cutscenes in between, but I'm going to try and hurry through this as fast as I can because I just want to get it done. I've been out here for about 10 hours already today, and I'm starting to feel it. So I really want to get this done, so let's get to it. Alright guys, well it was a pretty late night last night. I think in total I spent about 14 hours out here, and engine bay is done, valve cover is done, but to be honest guys, it was an absolute disaster. I don't know what was going on with those spray cans, but they were splattering paint everywhere. They would not produce an even coat. So I tried a few different methods. I swapped out the nozzles a couple of times and it did the same thing on all 4 cans. But yeah, it made a lot of spatter, so I got lots of spots all over the engine bay. Also, for whatever reason, no matter how I sprayed it, if I sprayed it thin or if I sprayed it with thick coats, I tried to get a wet coat, it almost seemed like it was coming out dry, and it almost seemed like it was drying before it even hit the engine bay. So after a while, I think I was on my 3rd can, I finally stopped, and I was curious on why it was so textured. So I just kind of rubbed my hand across it, and basically it was just like dust. I was able to rub all the paint off almost down to the primer again. So now you'll see in some areas, like back here, we're completely down to primer again. Some areas down here, on top of here, down here. So a lot of the paint ended up rubbing off, and I don't know why. The primer went on good, so I don't know what I did wrong here. I don't know if maybe the wax and grease remover had a bad reaction, but I didn't use very much of that stuff. I would wipe everything down and then I would dry it so that it left no residue behind. So I don't know, maybe that was the problem. That was the only part of the process that I changed, was using that wax and grease remover. Now, this was the test piece that I shot before doing anything on the car. I followed all the same steps on this. I used the wax and grease remover. I also used the adhesion promoter. And then I used the epoxy primer, base, and clear. And this turned out way nicer. Like, there's no graininess on it at all. I mean, it's a little textured because this is a very rusty piece of sheet metal, but this turned out way better than the engine bay did, so I don't understand why it worked on here but not in the engine bay, because I followed all the same steps. But I don't know, maybe these spray cans were a bad way to go, because I am not too happy with the results. But as it is right now, I'm not gonna bother redoing this. I really want to get the car driving, and I think once I have the engine and everything in here, that's gonna kind of take the attention away from all the imperfections. Now, don't get me wrong, I am very happy with the bodywork and how everything is hidden. There's no more holes. That all looks really good. So I think when I do plan on redoing this, it'll just be a matter of sanding everything back down to primer and trying again. But at this point, I don't have enough time to do that. So I think I'm gonna leave it as is. The valve cover, on the other hand, turned out pretty good. The coat isn't quite even on it because as soon as it started to do the same texture that it was doing in the engine bay, I stopped and I clear coated it. So it doesn't quite have an even coat down here. You can see it's a little light. So I'm just gonna take this as a learning experience. I probably shouldn't have used spray cans. I probably should have got color and put it in the spray gun and just done it that way. But I guess that's what I'll do next time. Overall, I am very happy with the color. On camera, it actually looks a lot different than it does in person. I think it's gonna contrast very well with the black. I'm going to unmask the car now. You can kind of see how the paint contrasts with the rad support. So let's get to it. Alright guys, I just did a very quick wipe down of the car and it's looking a lot better. This is probably the cleanest it's been in the past year, so nothing special, just a quick wipe down, but made a world of difference. So looking at the color now, it contrasts very well with the black, so I'm very happy with the color I chose. So I ended up making a trip to the paint store just to explain my situation and kind of let them know what happened, just to see if they had any advice or anything for me, maybe find out what went wrong. And basically what they told me is this is a very hard color to shoot out of a spray can. The color has a lot of metallic, a lot of pearl in it, and so the guy looked up the full composition of it and said there's actually a lot of powder in the paint. So that being said, when I explained to him kind of what it was doing, he said that makes a lot of sense because it was probably so powdery that it was drying before it even touched the engine bay. He asked me how close I was holding the spray can, and general rule of thumb is to spray about 8 to 10 inches away. So that's kind of what I did. In some areas I couldn't get that close because it's awkward in the engine bay. You can't really get that close in some areas. So I was spraying more like 12, maybe 14 inches away. And he said, yeah, that'll be why. With that kind of paint, when it's that powdery, you gotta shoot it really close. Especially out of a spray can. So he said I probably could have been about 6 inches away when I was spraying, and it might have gone on a little wetter. It might have striped a little bit, but it wouldn't have had the same textured effect, and then it wouldn't have rubbed off the same way. So something I could have done differently, but then I had also explained that it was spattering quite a bit, and that's also a result of it being a drier paint, is that it was probably clogging up the tip. It was probably drying in the tip and then causing it to splatter that way. So best thing I could have done is to order the paint in a quart and then sprayed it with my gun. Even though I'm not very confident with a spray gun, I probably would have got better results. But it's not a total loss. The guy assured me that I should be able to wet sand it down and still get a good finish on it. There will be a couple areas where it rubbed through that I'm gonna need to touch up. But he said as long as I got a good clear on there, I should be able to wet sand it out and then just respray in the areas that I need to, and then we'll re-clear it. So that kind of gave me a bit of a confidence boost that it's not a complete waste of time, and it might not actually be that bad to refinish it. But that's gonna have to be a project for next year because I am done with bodywork, I'm done with painting. It's time to get this engine in the car. So next time, we're gonna be unwrapping this bad boy. As you can see, I blew as much of the dust out of here as I could. Got it as clean as I could for the time being, so we are about ready to unwrap this beast and start putting parts together. So I am stoked about that. As you guys know, I am more of a builder. I'm not a body guy, and I'm hoping we can fly through this because it's almost spring and we got to get this thing running. So I've got a lot to do, but I'm stoked. But anyway, guys, I'm going to end this video here. I think it's been long enough. So if you like the video, guys, give me a thumbs up. Drop me a comment below. You guys know I love to hear feedback from you guys. All comments are appreciated. And if you haven't subscribed already, definitely consider doing so. We got a lot of stuff coming on the channel, a lot of work going on this car. Racing season's coming up, and we got some other stuff planned this year that's a little different. So we're really looking forward to it. Hope you guys are too. We'll see you next time.